I'm Jeff Schwartz, and I'm back from the Grand National Roadster Show. What an amazing event. And this is our March 2024 shop update video. Let's go out in the shop and see what we got going on this month. This is that 64 Ford Galaxy that we talked about a couple months back. And we have removed the chassis, as you can see. We've scanned it with and without the chassis, and we have now almost completed the chassis design. So the next step is to fabricate the chassis for that, and then we'll get going on putting it back together. This is the 1,000 horsepower 66 Chevy 2 Nova that is powered by a Wagner supercharged LS engine. We are doing final assembly on it, and all this little tedious details takes a lot of time, but we're putting windows in there. The mechanisms, obviously roll them up and down, weather stripping, and we're doing wiring on this car. It should be starting up and firing in the near future, and I can't wait to hear this thing run. This wide body LT4 powered 54 Studebaker is getting wired, and it's next up into the interior shop. Progress continues on this 54 Chevy pickup. It's got the 502 ramjet. We've put the intake manifold back together on that, and we've got the AC in there and the retro sound radio, and it's also being wired. As you can see, we finally got the reworked HRE wheels on this 70 Charger, and we are waiting for the laptop. I shouldn't say laptop, we're waiting for the iPad to arrive. And this has one of those systems where you can control everything from your phone or iPad. So we need the iPad, and then we can finish programming it and test all the systems. Do you remember the pile of Tesla parts that I showed you a month or two back? Well, this is going to be the recipient of those parts. This is a 68 Firebird, and it's getting a Schwartz G-Machine chassis that'll be designed with the Tesla all-wheel drive powertrain. This thing is going to really burn rubber. I can't wait to see this thing flying down the road. I haven't showed you this Challenger in a while, but we had finished all the fabrication part of this build a while back, and this one is going to be going into the paint shop soon. This one is getting the original color that it was, which is the lime green Mopar color. So Hellcat powertrain, some pretty cool stuff going into this car, and we should see some more forward progress coming up soon. And we have decided on a powertrain for this Challenger. This Challenger is going to be powered by a Trackhawk drivetrain, and that should be arriving hopefully next week, and we can get started on scanning and designing the chassis for this all-wheel drive monster. Also, obviously, Hellcat powered Trackhawk drivetrain, so should be a pretty cool car. So we've got the tires mounted on these beautiful forged line wheels for our C3 Corvette project, the 79 with number 79 on it. The rear tires are 315s and the fronts are 285s, so we're going to start with that setup and see how that all works out. And this is the Corvette chassis for our 79 C3. We've just finished fabricating this. There's still a few more welds to be done on it. We're going to be test fitting this into the 79 pretty soon for verification of all the bumper mount locations and so forth. And then we'll get on to powder coating it and getting it in the car. Here's a few of the CNC machined components that are going into our C3 Corvette chassis. They actually go into all of our chassis, however, rocker arm suspension is an option. So this is our upright for the rear suspension. It is CNC machined, and it uses a GM bearing with the GM bolt pattern wheel. The optional part of it is a rocker arm, so this rear suspension will have shock absorbers mounted horizontally in the luggage compartment of the car with this rocker arm actuating the shock. So that's an option on the Corvette chassis. Obviously, the billet upright is standard equipment. These are the control arm mounts for the chassis. These will bolt to the welded steel chassis, and then the control arms will go into these. The control arms use a very large spherical bearing on them. This is the bearing itself. So they're very beefy A-arms, no wheel hop issues with gigantic horsepower. So this is just a few of the inside components, and we'll cover that chassis again when it gets all the way completed. We're all real excited about the latest addition, this Lincoln 4800 Torchmate, and it'll take a 4x8 sheet of material, a 1/2 inch thick, and CNC plasma cut shapes out that we need for bracketry and so forth for our chassis. Much of that stuff has been subcontracted in the past. We're going to start doing some of that in-house now, and this will give us the tool to make a lot of additional cool stuff for you. The major fabrication has been done on this Chevy Monza wide body that I've shown you in previous videos, and now we're just going through it and final fitting all the miscellaneous components before we send it on to the paint process, bodywork and paint process. So we've been working on fitting window mechanisms and windows into the side doors and things like that, as well as mounting any miscellaneous components and you know, fuel fillers and the miscellaneous things that have to go in there to make it a running and driving car. So that's what we're doing, a little bit more detailed stuff, and then this one will get painted as well. So we got the lowest profile, large diameter drop base air cleaner that we could find on the planet Earth and modified it the most we can to get it to sit as low as we can under the hood while maintaining the required airflow to the air filter. And this is the minimum height that we can make the hood. So the customer wanted the hood to slope up and then slope downward towards the rear. So that's what we're doing here, fabricating that from scratch, and it'll have the look that he's looking for. And we'll be able to close it. Win-win. Dodge Monaco wagon on a Schwartz G-Machine chassis on air ride with forged line wheels. Would you daily drive this thing? Let us know in the comments. I sure would. We are buttoning up some final details on this Le Mans. We had a bad oxygen sensor. We're going to get that in there, and then it'll get back to tuning, and then a little test drive, and we'll get it on to the customer. This is a 87 Monte Carlo with T-tops, and it had a few little rust issues, so we've made the body basically like brand new again. We've replaced the floor pan, enlarged the tunnel to fit the transmission that's going in there, and mini tubbed it for some giant tall and wide tires. And the next step is finish up the bottom of the car with some epoxy and get that powder coated chassis underneath it. We're almost done with the metal work on this Pontiac Le Mans. We've still got a few final fitment things in the back there before we finish welding everything up. We got to make sure that the deck lid and the taillight panel and everything lines up perfectly before we final weld that in. So we're just making some final adjustments, and that'll get wrapped up this next week. On my recent travels out in the world, I met a number of people that watch our monthly update videos, and we certainly appreciate you watching. But it would also be very helpful if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button. That's all we have for this month. We'll see you next month for the April shop update video.